ADC is probably the most macro-reliant role in the game. With a class of champions that is close to zero agency on their own, it can feel impossible to carry games consistently. While we won't deny that, knowing the most important macro concepts to follow as an ADC can substantially increase your win rate, even in this zero agency role. So, we've made a comprehensive macro guide for everything you need to know to play ADC. In this video, we'll cover what you should be doing during the laning phase, what to do right after the first tower falls, and then how to transition into the mid to late game stages so you always know what you should be doing and how to consistently carry. Let's get right into it. Alright, let's first talk about the laning phase because there's a very important distinction between ADC and other roles when it comes to their early macro. Every other role's goal during the laning phase is to set up conditions that enable themselves to make plays to get further ahead. For example, a mid laner shoving a wave to roam towards another lane is one of the best macro plays that they can make. As an ADC though, you all know that it's not really possible to make plays on your own. You bring damage, but no CC or engage to speak of on most marksmen. This means that you can't really dictate what happens in most circumstances, and you're at the mercy of your teammates to make plays. This makes the role sound doom and gloom, but not really, and here's why. Imagine you took a professional ADC player and put them in gold elo. Do you think they wouldn't completely stomp every single game? Of course not. They would get at minimum 5 kills every laning phase, no matter how bad their support or other teammates might be. And this is for one simple reason. Your early goals for macro as an ADC aren't to make plays on your own. Instead, you just want to increase the likelihood that either your teammates do something well or your opponents make a mistake. Let's take a look at an example. Right now, Lucian has a lead and is freezing the wave versus the enemy Rakan and Ezreal. They're not strong enough to break it, so Rakan ends up leaving the Ezreal alone and paths towards mid. Ezreal stays, so Xerath walks up to try and zone him. Ezreal tries to fight back with his E, but that just allows Xerath to land a stun, which eventually lets Lucian move up and score a free kill. So, that was a bunch of random things that happened that Lucian had no control over, right? He didn't make Rakan roam to mid, he didn't make his own support move up, and he also didn't make the enemy ADC waste their mobility spell. But these events were all set into motion off Lucian's freeze. Something good was bound to happen off of the freeze, so it was his decision making that led to Ezreal's death in the first place. This is the most important mindset for the laning phase as an ADC. You don't have much agency and you can't control how your support plays, but you can definitely increase the odds of things going favorably with proper wave control. So, based on what's going on in the game, here's the wave tactic that you'll want to use to make it happen. Slow pushing is probably the best wave tactic during the early game, as it does one job really well. It makes most interactions go in your favor. Waves are really strong early, so having the bigger wave means that you will typically win fights. Not only do the minions give you more damage in trades and all-ins, but they also serve as a buffer against skill shots, etc. It's not guaranteed, but slow pushes make it much more likely that your teammate makes a good play or your opponents make a bad one. This Jinx is not ahead by any means, but this bigger wave allowed her to turn a gank around just because of how strong minions are early on. Like in this case, Nautilus finds a good hook on the enemy Jinx because it's much easier to look for fights when you're the one with the bigger wave compared to your opponent's smaller wave. Or in this example, Lucian is slow pushing with his Nami. This makes the ensuing gank much more difficult for the enemy team to pull off. It's just a really awkward play of them to go for, which eventually allows Lucian to turn the 2v3 fight in their favor. Now, looking at this entire sequence, it's easy to say that the enemy team just played terribly. They overforced the play, etc. But that's the entire point of slow pushing. You won't have much say in what ends up happening, but trying to keep the bigger wave at all times makes the things that do happen much more likely to go your way. Next up is freezing. There's a major difference between this and slow pushing. Looking at this example again, the enemy Jinx and Senna were not guaranteed to mess up. If they just played back, the wave would eventually reach them, and they'd be completely fine at their tower. As we said, slow pushing just makes the interactions between you and your opponents more likely to go in your favor, and is at its best when you don't have an advantage yet. On the other hand, freezing forces interactions with your opponents. They have to respond to what you're doing, or they will lose a ton of farm and experience. So this is a strategy that is much better when you're already ahead. Later on in this Jhin game, he's freezing because he now had a lead. This forces the enemy Senna and Jinx to try and break it, so they're not stuck in this terrible spot. So basically, Jhin is forcing them into this play. Nautilus goes in and Master Yi happens to be here trying to help his bot lane push the wave. Again, it's not like Jhin pre-planned this crazy fight happening right now, but because he was already fed, the fight is easy for him to handle and he cleans up a kill despite being the one getting ganked. That's the whole point of freezing when you're already strong. You're just forcing anything to happen. It doesn't matter what, because you're probably strong enough to make it go favorably anyway. Finally, there's fast pushing. This is what you do when you want as little lane interaction as possible. Your support sucks and they make you lose every trade, or you're behind and you can't fight your opponents anymore, you need to base, whatever it may be, if you don't want to be in that lane, then just fast push. Like here, Misfortune has had enough of this lane and this Janna, so she doesn't try to do anything fancy with this wave, she just fast pushes it to get the hell out of there and roams towards mid to look for a play there instead. And with how important wave control is for the ADC role, we highly recommend you check out our wave control course at skillcap.com. While you wait for your next game to start, you can learn everything you need to know about freezing, fast pushing, slow pushing, bouncing waves, the list goes on, all in just a few minutes to maximize your improvement rate. Or maybe you just like seeing your opponent's health go to zero. Then you'll love our trading course. We even have a skill test at the end so you can see how good you really are. Players just like you are leaving 5-star reviews and raving at how helpful they are. With premium courses for every role and skill taught by the best players, SkillCap is the perfect platform to help take your game to the next level. That's not all we offer though, as every week we release 10 brand new Smurf commentaries where a challenger player teaches you how to climb out of the exact rank you're stuck in. If you're looking for something more personal instead, then we got you covered with one-on-one coaching from our trained challenger experts. All this seemed too good to be true? Well, don't worry. We're backed by a rank up guarantee. If you don't significantly improve while actively using SkillCapped, then you get your money back, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Get the rank you've always wanted by clicking the link in the description below. Okay, so laning phase is over. What now? First, let's talk about what the ideal situation looks like, and then how to actually adapt to the randomness of solo queue. Technically, after lane, if you won your matchup and took the tower, you should be looking to rotate to the top lane in most cases, while your teammate swaps with you to cover bottom. The idea is that you use your lead to dominate the top laner who is there, and break their tower as well to put you even further ahead and open up the map even more. To understand how you need to adapt, you just need to know why this is ideal in the first place. The main point of this rotation is that it keeps all 3 lanes farmed, which is the #1 priority you should have in solo queue. And the other way to think about it is that the bonus of rotating top is that you can potentially get another tower on top of that. It's important to understand that because you will very often find situations in which your top laner refuses to cooperate and rotate bot, or it's just not a good time for them to move down there. Like right here, Xayah's Vladimir is still full HP and he's doing completely fine up top. Yone is also full HP and probably doesn't want to leave mid at the moment. In those situations, your main goal in solo queue should generally be to go to a lane where you can keep picking up farm rather than grouping to siege another tower. So Xayah just paths to bottom where she keeps farming. This sounds wrong, but hear us out. Sacking waves to group with your teammates to siege towers early on into the game is not good. Even if you get the tower, all the gold from it and the waves in that lane is being spread amongst 2 to 3 people. This is incredibly inefficient and doesn't play into your strengths as an ADC. You might argue, but taking a tower is important and worth a bit of my own income, right? You're opening up the map, which allows more side lane plays to happen, which is overall good for the team. Yeah, maybe, probably not. Taking side lane towers gives agency to your other teammates. They might take advantage of this and make plays in side lanes to pick off stragglers, or they might do absolutely nothing with it. Either way, there's usually no way that you can take advantage of this yourself in most games. Look, if you want to play that way, be our guest. But as an ADC in solo queue, one of the best things we recommend is that you build an ego that you are the only player that matters. And for you to improve your agency as any marksman, there's typically just one thing you can do: maximize the amount of gold that you're earning. Your goal every game is to get a lot of items and pump a ton of damage into the random fights that happen around you. That's it. That is your agency. So never worry about trying to set up the map through vision or towers to set up your other teammates. That isn't how you will consistently carry and climb. You just need to have more items and deal more damage every single game. So what we're saying is that after you take the bot tower, just prioritize going to the lane that doesn't have anyone else in it. Get some solo farm and keep getting stronger. That being said, Dragon does take priority over farm and towers even early on. Right now would be a perfect time for Varus to communicate to his Ornn that they should swap lanes, but because Dragon is up, Varus just keeps going bot lane so he can secure it for his team. And we're finally at mid and late game macro. Again, we'll explain what is ideal for you so you know what to look out for, and then we'll discuss how to adapt to your teammates having bad macro and how you can play around it. After like 20 minutes into the game, what usually ends up happening is that everyone stops being in lanes as much and start moving around the map way more consistently. What this means is that as an ADC, you are the best suited for staying mid. Side lanes become way more dangerous, while mid is a very short and safe lane to farm. Therefore, you really want to settle in mid at some point so that you're not susceptible to being assassinated in a side lane. Not only this, but your support almost always wants to play near you. By you being mid, this lets your support sit there too, which gives them solid access to the best wards in the game. Supports can easily ward around the high traffic mid areas and have quick access to both Baron and Dragon to place vision. So by being mid, you're keeping yourself safe and enabling your support at the same time. While this happens, your mid and top laners who are more self-reliant should be catching side lane waves to keep up their farm. After doing so, they may rotate over to join you in mid, and you can maybe do some things while you're grouped. Fantastic! While that all sounds good, none of that ever happens, right? In reality, people are just running around kind of cluelessly. A bunch of random fights begin happening, and it feels overall chaotic. So, when it comes to dealing with that randomness and chaos, there's a couple of things you want to keep in mind. Let's start with the first, keeping your farm up. Remember that the main goal for your team should technically be to keep all 3 lanes efficiently getting cleared so as to not waste how much gold and experience is earned through minions. So the ideal scenario we talked about was exactly for that reason. You can get all the mid waves while your side laners clear top and bottom so everyone is getting farmed up. Remember, farming is your agency. You are useless unless you deal big damage. If your teammates are not doing their job of catching side waves and instead just sit mid with you sharing your waves, then just do their job for them. So after this fight, Sivir notices that there's a big wave hitting their tower up in top. Technically, Annie or maybe Graves should be going to clear it, but they're not responding to it. Instead, Sivir just moves up, catches the wave, and pushes it out as much as possible before basing. Keep in mind that you are more than capable of being on your own in a side lane for a little bit. When you catch a wave, you have to decide just how far you'll push it out. This just depends on how much vision you have, what assassins or pick champions are in the game, or where every enemy on the map is. Use your own discretion for how much you can push out every time you catch a side lane wave. This takes practice and time to get down, but your goal is always to push it as much as you possibly can before leaving. In any case, you can push the wave to around here if you're scared, or even all the way to their tier 2 towers if you're confident that you'll be fine. Then you just rotate back to your team and stay grouped until the side lane wave needs clearing again. It's really that easy. Now, won't your team just die if you leave them alone? Yep, they might, but this leads into our next point. Think about your team dying like a bird randomly pooping on you. It obviously sucks, but none of you stops going outside because that might happen. You're aware it's a problem that can occur, but the benefits of going outside far outweigh the random odds of a bird ruining your day. Likewise, picking up side lane waves when no one else on your team is doing so is worth the random chances that they may die while you're away. So, take a look at this situation. Caitlyn has just finished fighting with her team to clean up stragglers in her own jungle. Afterwards, she looks at mid and sees that Olaf wants to farm here. Meanwhile, the enemy K'Sante is low and is unlikely to continue fighting. There's no easy objectives up and there's nothing to fight over. So if Olaf is going to stay mid, she'll choose to path towards bottom where she won't have to share a wave. When she does, the most random fight occurs in mid. You cannot in good faith argue that she should have played around that. Random fights happening while you farm doesn't mean that your choice to leave your team was wrong, it just means solo queue is random and stupid. Thankfully, in this case, she was able to get to mid and clean up the rest of the enemies once she joined her team. Now, that was a good case scenario where her team did fine while she was gone. What about when things go horribly wrong? In this case, Sivir and her team just finished the dragon. They try to force a fight, but the enemy team disengages and gets out. There's no way to chase right here, so what does Sivir do? She splits from her team to push mid so they can pressure the inhibitor with the wave. The second she's gone, the most random engage happens. This is the literal worst case scenario where her entire team died the second she left them alone. They didn't kill a single enemy member and they all died. This is what everyone worries about when splitting from their team in solo queue. But just watch what happens. Because Sivir had pushed very aggressively while her team was dying, some of them have to go respond to defend the inhibitor from the wave she had pushed in. Meanwhile, some of the others have to clear the incoming mid wave as well. All the while, Sivir is even counter jungling a bit. Despite wiping her team, it takes them so long to start Baron that Sivir's teammates have respawned by the time they finish it. They get there in time to force a fight, and Sivir's team actually ends up winning it and pushing all the way to their base to take that inhibitor from earlier. This is a key concept you have to understand. When you're splitting from your team, you're not doing it to go AFK. You're pushing waves and pressuring the map. So even if some of your allies die, the pressure you've put on the map will offset that disadvantage. And again, that's in the worst case scenario. Sometimes your team won't die, or will even win fights without you. In any case, for our final point, do you remember the comparison we made about birds pooping and solo queue teammates? Well, if you notice a massive flock of birds outside your window, then you generally want to let them pass before going outside. The chances of a bad time are obviously much higher there. This is the equivalent to when a fight is very likely to happen, particularly when objectives are spawning. If something like Dragon or Rift Herald is coming up, then do not split from your team for 1 or 2 waves. This is what you've picked ADC for. Those 5v5 fights where everyone is grouped and a standard 5v5 is going to happen are your bread and butter. This is what you farmed the whole game for, so don't leave your team when you're expecting an objective fight. And that's it. ADC macro is actually that simple in most games. Pick up waves whenever possible, and that way when you do fight with your team, you'll deal a lot of damage and hopefully carry. And that's everything you need to know to macro as AD carry. For everything else, there's skillcap.com. Take our AD carry course on how to carry in low elo. We teach you a super effective strategy that lets you climb ranks fast as a marksman. Players just like you are leaving 5-star reviews raving how this course actually helped them climb. Or maybe you want something super simple to execute. Then you'll love our course on the most brain-dead strategy for AD carry that actually works. One of our website subscribers hit diamond using this strategy with a 70% win rate and became the rank 9 Sivir in North America. Still don't believe us? Well, the best part is it's completely risk-free to try, as you're kept safe with our rank up insurance. If you don't significantly improve while actively using SkillCap, then you get your money back, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Get the rank you've always wanted by clicking the link in the description below. Alright, that's a wrap on this one, guys. We here at SkillCap want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.